Hey guys, this is 8.10 quadratic word problems. So, a relief package is released from a helicopter at 1,600 feet. The height of the package can be modeled by the equation h equals negative 16t squared plus 1,600, where h is the height of the package in feet and t is the time in seconds. The pilot wants to know how long it will take for the package to hit the ground. So, if we're thinking about this situation, the ground is modeled by the x-axis. So the equation that we're going to use to find this is the one straight from the equation. So we have h equals negative 16t squared plus 1,600. So looking at our equation, we know that our a value is negative 16. The b value is 0 because there is no t in this equation. And the c value is 1,600. So it says solve using the quadratic formula. So this is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So again, that comes straight from your formula sheet, so you don't have to memorize it. But our b value is 0. Our a value is negative 16. So I put it in for both a's from the formula sheet. And then the c value is 1,600. So remember, you plug it into the calculator one time with a plus sign and the second time with a subtraction. So when you plug it in with the plus sign, you end up with t equals negative 10. So when you plug it in with the subtraction sign, you end up with t equals 10. So looking back at the situation, the question asks that the pilot wants to know how long it'll take for the package to hit the ground. Well, nothing can happen in negative 10 seconds. It's not going to hit the ground before it's ever thrown from the helicopter. So the negative 10 doesn't make sense in the context of the situation. But the positive 10 does. So it takes 10 seconds for the package to hit the ground. So this is the answer we want, not the negative 10, because it doesn't make sense. So then Jason jumped off a cliff into the ocean in Mexico while vacationing with some friends. His height as a function of time can be modeled by the function h of t equals negative 16t squared plus 16t plus 480, where t is the time in seconds and h is the height in feet. So it says, how long does it take for Jason to reach his maximum height? So if we're talking about him jumping off of a cliff, and we want to know when he will reach his maximum height. Here's Jason. And he's going to jump off this cliff. Now, when you jump off a cliff, you don't simply just step off the side. You've got a little bit of a jump before you come down. So the maximum height on this is represented by your vertex. Now, this goes back to Unit 7 on how to find the vertex given an equation. So we want to do the x value, your time, is equal to negative b over 2a. So when we look at our equation, we have a is negative 16 and b is 16. I'm not worried about the c right now, but we can go ahead and identify it anyway. 480. Ooh. So when we plug in what we know, our x value, the amount of time, our t value, is negative b divided by 2 times a. And when we do that, we end up with 1/2. So what that means is, go back to your question. How long does it take for Jason to reach his maximum height? It takes him half of a second. So then it says, what was the highest point? So now we know it's half a second to get here. And we have to figure out, how high is that? So remember, h is your height. So we plug in t is half, because the amount of time it took to get there is half. So we have negative 16 t squared plus 16 t plus 480. So if we plug in that half that we just found, it takes half of a second to get to the maximum height. So when our time is 1/2, we'll find out our maximum. So when you plug that into a calculator, you get 484 feet. So he starts at 480 feet. He jumps half a second later. He's 484 feet in the air. And then it wants to know, how long does it take him to hit the water? Jason hit the water after how many seconds? So this is looking for your x-intercept. So remember, your x-intercepts can be found through factoring, where you break it down into the two binomials and then solve it, or it can be solved using the completing the square method, or it can be solved using the quadratic formula. Because the quadratic formula is actually one of the faster ways to go, it's on your formula sheet. That's how I'm going to plug this in. So we have negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c divided by 2a. So this is, I'm getting my a, b, and c from the original equation up here. So a is negative 16, b is 16, c is 480. And when you plug that into your calculator using the addition sign, you get negative 5. When you use the subtraction sign on the outside of your square root, you get positive 6. So we know that the negative 5 in context is not going to make sense. He's not going to hit the water in negative 5 seconds, so it's going to take him 6 seconds to hit the water. All right, so the next one is very similar to number 1. So we're using the equation and the quadratic formula in order to solve that equation. So I'm going to let that be a practice problem, and we're going to move on to the back. It says a rocket carrying fireworks is launched from a hill 80 feet above the lake. The rocket will fall into the lake after exploding at its maximum height. The rocket's height about the surface of the lake is given by h equals negative 16t squared plus 64t plus 80. So it says, what is the height? So we're finding out our output, our h value, of the rocket after 1.5 seconds. So the amount of time is given to you. So t equals 1.5. So when we plug that into your equation, your given equation, a time of 1.5 seconds, 1.5 seconds. And then you plug that in the calculator, you find out that at 1.5 seconds, the height will be 140 feet. So it says, what is the maximum height reached by the rocket? So we don't know how much time it takes to get there. And when finding the vertex, which is that maximum height, we have to find the x value first. And remember, the x value is found by doing negative b over 2 times a. So our x value is negative b, and our b value is 64, over 2 times a, and a is 16. So when you plug that into the calculator, you get 2 seconds. So it takes him 2 seconds to reach his maximum height, so we have to plug that back in to find out what is the maximum height. So we have negative 16, our time squared, plus 64 multiplied by our time, plus 80. Our time is 2 seconds. So at 2 seconds, he will be 144 feet up. So that is his maximum height. So the next one says, how long will it take for the rocket to hit 128 feet? So I solved this on the answer key using actual algebra and manipulating my variables, but in class I told you guys to simply use the table feature on your calculator, and we found that out that at 1 second and at 3 seconds, this rocket was at 128 feet. Now remember, this is a parabola, so it's going to have the same y value twice. So always look for the second one just in case it's there. And then it says, after how many seconds after its launch will the rocket hit the lake? So the lake is going to be your x-axis, so we're using the quadratic formula. So again, we have an a value that is negative 16, a b value that is 64, and a c value that is 80. So we plug it in. And when you plug that into the calculator, you get 2 different answers. So when you do your addition, you end up with x equals negative 1. And when you do subtraction, you end up with x equals 5. So after how many seconds will the rocket hit the lake? 5 seconds. All right, our next one. The product of 2 consecutive positive integers is 132. Now, examples of consecutive positive integers is like 1 and 2. So to get from one number to the next, you add 1. So the x is going to represent the lower number, x plus 1 represents the next consecutive positive integer. So when you multiply them, the product of 2 consecutive positive integers is 132. So at this point, we have to get it in standard form. So we have x squared plus x times 1 is x equals 132. It's still not in standard form. We have to minus our 132, subtract it from both sides, and we're left with x squared plus x minus 132 equals 0. So now that's in standard form, you can use your quadratic formula to plug in your a value of 1, your b value of 1, and your c value of negative 132 to find your 2 numbers. On all 3 of these, I'm going to set them up for you guys, or on the last one, I'm going to set it up for you guys, but not actually solve it. This one I'll walk you through so you know how to find the second term once you have the first one. So we have negative b, which is 1, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4a and c over 2 times a. When you do that, you get out 11. So that was our whole number, our positive number was 11. So if we have the number 11 as our smaller value, because we have x equals 11, we do x plus 1 to get our next number, which would be 12. So 11 is the first number, 12 is the second. Another way to check them is multiply 11 times 12, and you'll get 132, which is the product of the 2 positive consecutive integers. On the next one, we're looking for 2 consecutive odd integers. So our first number is represented by x. And if our first number was 1, to get to the next odd number, it would be 3. So to go from 1 to 3, you add 2. So when we do that, we get 195. The product of our two consecutive odd integers is 195. So again, distribute the x and then subtract your constant to get this in standard form. And now that it's in standard form, you can label your A, B, and C. So A equals 1, B is 2, and C is negative 195. You can plug it into the quadratic formula and you'll find out that x equals 13. So to find the next number, you do x, which is 13, plus 2, and you get 15. So our two numbers are 13 and 15. Both of those are odd, and when you multiply them, they do give you 195. So the last one, again, we're going to set this one up, but we're not going to solve it. These are positive even integers. So if our first number was 2, to get to 4, you would add 2. So it's the same setup as the odd numbers, and you get 168. So I'm going to let you guys finish solving that one the whole way through. And the last one we're going to do is number 8. So it says the length of a rectangular garden. So the first thing I'm going to do is draw a rectangular garden. The length is 10 yards more than twice the width. It doesn't tell us how big the width is, so we're going to call it x, and the length is 10 more than twice the width. And it says the total area is 48. So when we do our width times our length, or length times width, we end up with 48. So to work this one out, distribute the x. We have 2x squared plus 10x equals 48. Move your constant. We're left with 2x squared plus 10x minus 48 equals 0. So at this point, you can go ahead and use your quadratic formula, label A, B, and C, use your quadratic formula, or you can complete the square, or you can factor in order to find the dimensions of this square, of this rectangle. So when you do that, you will get a width of 3. So to find your length, given a width of 3, we do 2 times 3 plus 10, and we get 16. So your width is 3, your length is 16. So I'm going to leave this last little section for you guys to process this graph and make some estimates and see what you can learn based on the equation and the graph in context.